Hey everybody, it's Eric Balance coming to you with the Resilient Minds podcast, where I feature beautiful entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and experts in their field, where they help us discover their X factor, their experience of life, only to discover how they were able to accomplish and find out their Y factor, their big why, their purpose in life. So join me as we get to discover the beauty of our minds and how can we really continue to go after the biggest and most wildest dreams while we continue to pursue and manifest our greatest intelligence that comes from the heart. Also, if you haven't, go check out the new alignment course that I've created at www.ericbalance.com/alignment, ALIGNMENT. See you on the show. Welcome everybody to the Resilient Minds podcast. I'm excited today because we are sitting here from someone from the future, 18 hours ahead of us, Mr. Jack Delosa. So good to see you, brother.
You too, Eric. Thanks for having me, man. Good to be here.
Yeah, man, it's a blessing. So for those of you that don't know Jack, he's really a high-profile investor, entrepreneur, best-selling author. What I'm most excited though, bro, is I know you're doing tons of amazing things in the business coaching. Entourage has been helping, 800,000 different business owners around the world. But what is most fascinating for me is how you're able to go into all of these different organizations, from Combank, Westpac, Amex, Virgin, Microsoft, Queensland Government, University of Sydney, and really drive performance, drive culture, drive your energy. And there's something that I really love, one of your quotes is, your life's work is the direct representation of who you are. And for me, man, under your leadership, how you've been able to achieve, the fourth best place to work in Australia, top 50th in Australasia, these things are a beautiful representation of what's inside of you, my friend. And so I'm excited today to learn from you, because I always say that our mirrors are right in front of us, and we get to learn from our mirrors if we listen. So I'm going to listen a lot because I'm very curious. And so thanks for being here, bro. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind introduction.
Yeah, man. So tell me about what started it all. I always talk about, the X factor and how our experiences contribute to our why, the expression of our life contributing to why we're here, what we're here to achieve. And I know that for myself, it's been these key foundational concepts of going through life and experiencing them to then allow me to identify something deeper within myself, to then drive certainty into change and to make that change. So tell me, what was that X factor or that experience for you that may have happened? And, I'd love for you to take us on this little journey and really express of what was the determining or experience that brought that to life, bro.
For sure, man. So my story starts at a very young age. When I was about 4 or 5 years of age, my parents ran a not-for-profit organization called Breaking the Cycle. And Breaking the Cycle would take youth at risk, off the street, out of jail, out of abusive homes. They'd put them through a 3-month training program on life skills and employability skills, and then they'd facilitate them into employment. And so technically, bureaucratically, they were considered to be a job placement agency, but they were so much more than that. They deliberately catered to those from the most challenging of backgrounds. And so even though they, deliberately sought out young adults from the most challenging of backgrounds, they were the most successful job placement agency for long-term unemployed youth in the country. And so that's the classroom I grew up in. My mum was the head trainer. My father was the managing director. And so I literally grew up in mum's classroom as she taught youth at risk that, they'd come into these programs looking, pretty battle tested. She'd teach them personal development. She'd teach them mindset. She'd teach them employability skills. She'd teach them how to be functional adults. And so, I'd be wagging school in grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and, spending the day in mum's classroom. And so, breaking the cycle, I think is where I get my why from. It taught me that even those from the most challenged of backgrounds, if given the right opportunity, if put in the right environment, can grow into their best self, regardless of where they've come from, regardless of how hard their life has been up until now. And so the other thing breaking the cycle taught me was the traditional system doesn't work for a lot of people. And that's a growing segment. That's a growing pond. Those that, aren't brought to life or developed into themselves through traditional education or a traditional career path. And so I was learning all of these pretty foundational lessons as I was going through my formative years. As I said, Breaking the Cycle was a not-for-profit organization, so they were reliant on government funding. The government restructured the way they issued capital out to not-for-profits, and Breaking the Cycle was unsuccessful in, acquiring that funding under the new regime. And so the organization collapsed. It was my parents' life's work. It infused our entire life. It infused our home. We had, a couple of the Breaking the Cycle students living with us that became, my brother and sister. And then one day the show stopped, and I remember feeling, I was probably like 11 at this point. And so I remember just feeling a deep sense of anger and injustice and just unfairness, really, that sort of stays with me, up until this day, and will probably stay with me forever. Because in the mind of an 11-year-old, and even in the mind of a 36-year-old today, it's like, who decided that money was better invested elsewhere? Put me in front of that person, Yeah. And so that's where the Breaking the Cycle taught me that the world needs changing and that the world is changeable. The collapse of Breaking the Cycle is where I got my commercial side, because I wanted to build companies that did meaningful things, but I wanted them to be profitable in and of themselves, A, so that they could be sustainable, but B, so that they could be scalable. And so in everything I do, I try and build companies that make a meaningful difference to people's lives, across a range of different industries. But with a very focused eye on financial performance, right? Because it's with financial performance that we can attract the best talent from around the world. It's with financial performance that we can invest more than anybody else in marketing and spread our message further and reach more people. And so I think this is one of the core things, and perhaps your audience might resonate with this, is I think a lot of the time the world, we've got kind of altruistic people that have really good intent, but perhaps don't develop the commercial capabilities or get organized enough to make structural or systemic or scalable change. And then on the other side, you've got business people that are hugely commercial and hugely organized, but perhaps don't have the best intent. And so, they're more driven out of, self-orientated desires, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And genuinely, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I think the world needs now more people that combine both of those approaches, people that genuinely want to make the world a better place and improve the lives of not just them and their family, but everybody around them, and perhaps the world at large, who can get organized, who can be commercial, who don't discount the importance of money. Like, I see this so much in the spiritual communities, man. There's people fucking pretending to have transcended money. It's like bullshit, man. Money, and some of the greatest spiritual masters will teach you this. Money right now is the most powerful force in the universe. I don't care how spiritual you are, but if and when we discount the importance of money and pretend to have transcended it, that person ends up often broke, often not living a great life, often not being an example to many people at all, especially not a attractive example, and never creates change at a scalable level. And so I think if anybody is driven by vision, is driven by mission, is driven by a sense of wanting to make the world a better place, the best thing you can do is learn how to use business as a weapon to change the world.
I love it, bro. And it's literally, what you're sharing with the part of the spiritual community. I think, for myself, I spent a lot of time traveling, and I identified and spent a lot of what would people would call themselves gurus and things like this. And then I realized that, why am I listening to this individual? Like, they're not in a place that makes me excited. They're not in a place that is actually super curious. Like I'm sitting there and I'm fascinated by what they're saying, and I think it's beautiful. Yes. And they're not living the life that like speaks to me. You know what I mean? So yes, how can we really start to bridge all of these like you said, right? Like, our life is a direct representation of who we are, what we do, how we, and our business can exemplify that and amplify that. And so I always talk about the combination of purpose and bringing people, profit, planet together, and really helping that identification come to realization, to actualization. Yes. And like you said, bro, go ahead, please.
No, you hit the nail on the head, mate, which is, I think a lot of, and again, there's no judgment around any of this. There's no right or wrong. No. This is just my views and my opinion and how I've built myself to view the world and approach life, which is, I think a lot of people, some people approach spirituality from like a renunciation standpoint, like renouncing everything, like a hardcore, like Buddhism to the most hardcore extreme degree, for example, is about renouncing stuff. And so when you get some spiritual people and they renounce, they nothing exists, I don't exist, you don't exist, money doesn't exist, perception doesn't exist, all that exists is the now moment, therefore all I'm going to do is meditate. These people live in Byron Bay, which is a beautiful kind of ocean town here in Australia. I
love Byron. Great place.
Yeah. Oh, good. You've been?
Yeah. I used to live in Bulimba in Brisbane.
Beautiful. Right. Beautiful part of the world. And and they're either homeless or living in a house that's breaking down. They don't have clothes. They don't have access to any decent food or hot water or anything like that. Now, that individual is probably living in an absolutely blissful state most of the time if they've dedicated their life to that kind of meditation. And so again, there's no judgment around that. Like if that's what somebody wants to do and that brings them bliss, then that's awesome. I think for me, I see, that state of bliss and oneness, that's where we came from before we got here. And that's where we'll return to when we leave here. I think we came here to fucking live. And so for me, it's exactly what you just said, which is, how do we use spirituality and consciousness not as an escape mechanism, not as a off-ramp to life, not as a fucking avoidance strategy to avoid becoming someone who's competent and capable and able to make money and make change in the real world, right? So don't use it to spiritually bypass the fucking human existence. For me, it's about how do we use spirituality and consciousness to give us more strength, to strengthen our resolve, to strengthen our mindset, to become unattached in the moments where that's what's required. And so I think any methodology is a good one that gives you strength to lean more into creating the life that you want to create, which for everybody is going to be a difficult journey. And so if a methodology or ideology gives you strength to lean into that, I think it's a healthy one. But if an ideology kind of takes you out of that or gives you this kind of false superiority that you've already transcended everything and therefore you don't need to do anything, I think that's a really destructive view of spirituality.
Beautiful, bro. In this creative part, because that destructive part, that dichotomy, right, is a beautiful thing to know for you and me, right? What we don't want. I think that's the best part of it is really understanding that, going through that experience for yourself and for me, and seeing that it's a responsibility that we decided to take on, and saying, hey, no, like, I'm going to create in this life. I'm going to use this awareness to my fullest potential and activate people around me in businesses and organizations and create the harmony in the culture by literally what you said, bringing the piece of the structure, right?
Yeah.
And bringing the piece of the oneness and connection and actualizing that in the planet,
Yes.
actualizing that through our ability to communicate.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I think that's what it's about. And I think the other component of that is I just feel like culture today, we live in a world where people avoid discomfort. And, if you want to do anything meaningful in life, you're going to need to go outside your comfort zone. Yeah. If you go outside your comfort zone, by definition, you're going to be uncomfortable. And so the key is to become comfortable being uncomfortable, right? I feel like another kind of red flag or trap for young players when it comes to the whole spirituality consciousness conversation is when they feel uncomfortable, they take it as a sign that they're on the wrong path, and therefore they retreat and quit and go back. And so again, it's a belief system that keeps them trapped in their comfort zone their entire life, right? And so I think anything worth doing in life, well, the things that are most meaningful in life are the things that challenge you, because they expand you and they challenge you to become more. And that journey is one that is deeply uncomfortable most of the time. And so the key is, how do you become comfortable and resolved in that way of living, not avoid uncomfortability at all costs?
Do you think it's about having the capacity within? Because as you know, when you are able to understand this mirror, right, that we're talking about, of identifying with the outside world, seeing around you this uncomfort, does that inverse of you, when you come from an internal understanding and these uncomfortable situations are happening because it really is within you, do you think it's about helping yourself identify the capacity of being able to hold that space within, and then as a result around?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I would say it starts with awareness, and then with that awareness, one can build their capacity. And so I'd say when I say it starts with awareness, what I mean by that is you just have to realize that how the human existence works is that to do anything meaningful is going to require challenge, and often that's going to feel uncomfortable. And so it's just that awareness. Whereas I think a lot of today, particularly up and coming generations or people that kind of misinterpret a lot of spiritual teachings, is it's like everything should feel good all of the time. If I feel challenged or uncomfortable, it's either somebody else's fault or it's a sign by the universe that I'm going in the wrong direction. I'm entitled to just about everything without needing to work for long periods of time. I haven't developed the capabilities to navigate any sort of adversity. And, I think everything should feel good all the time. And I think that is one of the most destructive belief systems that is, eroding the power of human will globally right now.
Do you feel doing what, like with resilience and the infinite will that you're bringing in now with the entourage to a lot of these different organizations, business owners, what are some of the key philosophies that you're stepping into as a responsible role model, especially for these organizations? How do you feel like that's our responsibility, your responsibility, and your organization's responsibility as well?
I think all responsibility starts with, embodying the philosophies that we're talking about now to the best of one's ability. It starts with being an example, right? I think the best thing anybody can do is be an embodiment of their principles and their values. And that's the most powerful mechanism through which we can each change the world. Going again, like a lot of these upcoming generations, there's a lot of kind of activism. It's like, let's go and protest and trash a city or hold up signs or, tell the world what they're doing wrong. And that's not activism, right? That's just throwing a tantrum. Yeah. Activism is, how do I want the world to be? How do I embody that vision and lead by example. That's activism.
You're amazing, bro. And it's amazing because, Socrates, he said something like, what was the exact quote? It's something along the lines that there's no need to like break down the old, just go and create the new.
Create the new. Yes.
And by being the new, by being the change you wish to see, by amplifying this human being, right, that we get to be, you get to co-create with other amazing beings that are resonating at the same frequency. And we get to then, I always say, it's like we get to start resonating at this frequency, and then we get to start playing in the playground called planet Earth with brothers like Jack in Australia from on the other side of the world. You know what I mean? Like, it becomes fun. And instead of us having to like fight constantly and needing to like, create some sort of an egocentric perspective, we can really walk into a spirit-centric philosophy that allows us to come together and harmonize it, because we become more stronger in numbers. But not only that, we're focused on the structure, we're focused on the spirituality, and we're bridging that gap together on like in physical form.
Yes, 100%.
I love it, bro. So tell me about this like resilience that you've been able to embody. And what were some of the biggest challenges that you needed to experience to really, step even more into this type of, strength, into this capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I've been through a number of different episodes throughout my life that, my life feels like one big episode of resilience, to be honest. But
Amazing. I love it. Same. I feel the same way.
Yeah, that's the real therapy.
Yep.
The biggest challenge of my career came in 2016, and so I started the Entourage in 2010. And what we do at the Entourage is we work with small to medium-sized business owners to help them scale. And so, a business owner starts an accounting business or a personal training business or a physio business or a tech company or a consulting company, and they build it off intuition and natural hustle and improvisation. And they get to a point where they've got 8 people, 10 people, 20 people working for them. They've got a growing customer base, and they've done incredibly well to get the business to the point where it is. But they're now working 40, 50, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, kind of running themselves into the ground. They come to the Entourage because we help them turn their business into a commercially scalable engine that can grow beyond just their personal exertion and can, scale beyond them and work without them. And so that's what we help people do. We help business owners and entrepreneurs scale companies, starting at the kind of 6 and 7 figure mark and helping them scale to 8 and 9 figures and beyond. 2015, we'd been doing that really well for 5 years. We'd been experiencing incredible growth rates ourselves. And we had parents and students kind of beating down our door saying, little Jimmy finishes high school next year. Can he come and study at the Entourage? And we're like, well, we really just work with existing business owners that already have that kind of foundational business to help them scale. So we don't really have anything for little Jimmy or little Jane. And the demand became extreme. And so what we ended up doing is we became a college to offer diplomas in entrepreneurship and business for student stage people. We entered that space incredibly successfully. We had student success rates, student retention rates that were 10 times industry average. We just took all of the muscle that we developed in business and we brought it into, the accredited education space, and we were able to outperform, traditional education institutions for that reason. And then what happened was the government essentially started to change the regulations after about 6 months into that space. And so the first thing they said was, if you're new to the space over the last 2 years, we're not going to pay you for the next 6 months. And so for us, that represented a cumulative cash gap of about $6 million that, I needed to find ways to fill, because you've still got students, you've still got employees, you've still got rent, you've still got all of the expenses, but you're not receiving the cash. And so we needed to bridge that. That was relatively easy to what came next. In October of 2016, the government came out and they essentially said, we're wiping out the industry. And what they were trying to do was send everybody back to university and TAFE. They were trying to kind of wipe out that private sector, particularly in business education and private colleges. And so for us, that meant we were 3 months away from a monthly loss of $800,000 because we'd built an institution around this college model that we had entered into and done really successfully. And so we needed to go from 90 people to 40 people, in a matter of days. We immediately were losing anywhere from $500,000 to $600,000 a month. As I said, 3 months away from losing $800,000 a month. We had no, real kind of durable business model that was going to survive beyond 3 months. We needed to reinvent, our whole unaccredited model for business owners and kind of go back to what our core purpose was. And so, the business was in extreme distress for 3 or 4 years at that point. And those were the hardest years of my life because, when it's not to say it's the worst thing that's happened, right? Because I've had people close to me pass away and all that kind of stuff. And that's more sad. But what happens when someone passes away is if someone passes away or gets sick or, some sort of tragic life event happens, we often just, you'll rest, right? And you'll go spend time with your family and you'll process and you'll heal and, to the best of one's ability. What happens when your business gets into a position of extreme distress is you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you want to retreat, you want to, put your head under the blanket and wish it all away. But in those situations, if you're the owner and director of the company, it's pretty much all on you, or it all starts with you. You definitely need the contribution of an amazing team. But in order to make decisions that have, legal implications and creditor implications and financier implications and tax office implications, it's all on you. And so not only are you going through something that's extremely difficult and extremely ego crushing, which is a positive, you have no choice but to lean into, well, you can quit, but if you choose not to quit, you have no choice but to lean into it all. And so, those were the hardest years of my life because when you most need reprieve or pause, you're not able to get it. And so, we were in millions and millions and millions of dollars in debt. I had multiple kind of legal cases against me at any given moment, trying to bring a business back from, being $4 or $5 million in the hole. And you're not kind of living in that for a day or a week or a month. We were living in that for kind of 3 years. And so the endurance that it requires, is a lot. So yeah, that was the most challenging period of my life. Fast forward kind of 3 years after that, we were bigger than we'd ever been. We were more profitable than we'd ever been. We'd rebuilt our culture to a point where it was infused with purpose again, and people felt safe and secure and alive. And, we had a vision that excited everybody. Today, our members and our clients are more aligned to who we are than ever before. Our success stories that we're able to produce with our members and clients are greater than we've ever had before. And so we got back to a place where it made us better, but it was so incredibly difficult for a relatively long period of time. And the lesson there is this: the periods of our greatest challenge are the periods of our greatest growth. And if quitting isn't an option and you lean into challenge and you pause often enough to reflect on it and to soak in the wisdom that the experience offers you, then hard times will make you better. And this sort of comes back to what we're talking about earlier, Eric, which is when people avoid difficulty and avoid hard times, they rob themselves of the very development that they seek. And so one of my favorite quotes is, I asked God for growth, and so she gave me challenge. I really think that our character and our being is sculpted through periods of challenge. And it's healthy. I mean, you can definitely take it to an extreme degree where it stops being healthy. And I think I was probably there for a couple of years, but nonetheless, I've done the sort of healing work on the other side of it and come out better for it. So Yeah, it was a crazy ride.
Jack, can I ask you about that time, that 3-4 years? Like, what was the feeling that you were going through? Like, I kind of felt it as you were reflecting back on it. However, I'd love to just kind of maybe for anybody that's watching or listening to go back to that. Like, what were the feelings that you needed to kind of pay attention to, and what did you do to overcome those feelings? For anybody that's like maybe going through a tough time right now and listening in and saying, hey, like, this is what I need to hear.
Yeah, I think all of that really accelerated my consciousness development and my emotional development and all of that kind of stuff. So coming into 2016, I probably didn't have, while I'd studied high performance and mindset and, cognitive behavioral therapy my whole life, in terms of that sort of deep healing work, I hadn't started it yet. And so to understand kind of the feeling, to set the context around that, you got to understand that, my company prior to Entourage was a company called MBE. We'd help small to medium-sized business owners raise money from investors. We helped our clients raise over $300 million. We became one of the fastest growing companies in Australia. I then started Entourage. That boom, by 2015, we had a community of 300,000 people, and we're Australia's largest and most effective business coaching institution in Australia. And so what came prior to 2016 was probably a decade of, high growth and success. And so what happened, particularly if you haven't been through that journey before, is one's identity becomes tied up in a lot of that. And so you go from extreme growth and success and, a growth rate that's as steep as you can imagine to not even a decline, but like it wasn't even like a decline like that. It was a, literally fall off a cliff and $4 or $5 million in the hole and losing $500,000 a month and needing to make redundancies. Like it was literally
major.
One extreme to the other. And so I remember one of my team who I was good friends with at the time, she asked the question you just said. She's like, how does it feel? Because she was like, I know like we're all sad and we're all stressed. And she was talking about my team, but like, we can't imagine how it feels for you. How does it feel? And I said to her, it's kind of like if you're walking through a park on a Sunday and the sun is shining and the birds are tweeting and you're feeling good and you're soaking it in and you're really grateful. And then you hear this really loud horn and you look to the right of you and there's a freight train that's coming your way and it's 10 meters away from you. If you can imagine what would happen to your body in that moment, you would tense up, you lose a lot of your cognitive ability. You don't eat, you don't sleep. You become not the best partner or family member because unless you quit, you have to be 200% focused on the survival of the company and everybody within it. And so if you can imagine that feeling of that train being 10 meters away and then imagine living in that state for probably 18 months, that's what it was like.
So I'm hearing like it was very survival focused. It was very in your identity because of everything. Like, you had massive growth. So this survival mechanisms came in. And so, as you mentioned, all of these relationships around you were kind of being strained upon. So what was it that allowed you to really overcome this survival mechanism that was like kind of, it was activated, right? That fight or flight, and you chose to fight, right? You didn't flight. And so what was it? Where did you find, how deep did it go? Because that is, I think, where most people don't know that they have that inside.
So for me, it came down to resolve and making the decision. And so one of the things that, having done a lot of personal development and mindset work and high performance work prior to 2016, one of the benefits of that was I have the firm view that there is nothing more powerful than human will. And when you make a decision, if you truly make a decision, you can change and bend reality without question. And so I was meeting with administrators and liquidators, people that wind up companies for a living, and they were all saying the same thing. They're all saying, Jack, you cannot trade out of this. And, I would have been 27, 28 at this point, but I had enough wisdom or kind of experience at that point to say, you know what, I understand that's the current reality as the experts see it, but I refuse to accept that reality, and I'm going to create a different one. And so I knew and I understood the power of human resolve and human decision. The second thing is, Eric, is I'm not sure if you can draw the parallel between what happened to me in 2016 and what happened to Breaking the Cycle when I was 11 years of age. It was the same thing. It was a great organization doing really good work that had their survival threatened due to government regulatory decisions. It was the same thing. And when I was 11 and Breaking the Cycle collapsed, our family lost all of our money. We had to sell the family home. We had to sell the family cars. We started to eat differently, eat different food. Or, it was a complete change in lifestyle at a very young and formative age for me. And so I needed to break that cycle. I was met with an intergenerational pattern. And it was, do I want to continue this cycle of, this pattern playing out of, the government kind of destroying really beautiful organizations, or do I want to break that cycle? And so a lot of my resolve came from knowing and being really familiar with what happens when organizations collapse. Everybody loses. Every team member loses. Every customer loses. Every financier loses. Every investor loses. Every creditor loses. Every shareholder, everybody loses. It's not good, man. And so, yeah, my thought process was, I believe I can make this work. I have the resolve to make this work. And if it's going to require, if it takes me 3 years of pretty excruciating difficulty and challenge in order to make it work, but in doing so, the net outcome is significantly net positive to what it would be if I walk away. Decision made.
Absolutely. It's beautiful, bro, man. It really, like, you saying, you're choosing to create a different reality is absolutely important. And you speaking that into existence is even more important. I think a lot of people don't understand the power of their language that they have with themselves and others. And by you just saying, no, I refuse to accept that, I'm creating a different reality, it gives us so much power. And as you mentioned, will starts to amplify because of that. This pattern, that the government, and I think that you and I both see these patterns have been playing out long before we came here in this physical space of the government, and recognizing it now during COVID and all these other, whether it's the, with the dollars, with, finance, what's going on. I'm curious to know about what you feel, as a, newer generation, kind of us leading the pack in a way of like really bringing this philosophy in a way of culture, of performance, of coming together. What do you feel like as any thought leader or any person that really wants to drive change, how do you think we should challenge these patterns in a way that is constructive, not destructive, like we talked before?
Do something about it.
Yeah.
And so, if you're not satisfied with what a government is doing, either vote for a different government or go into politics and become a better politician. Yeah. But, as we spoke about before, kind of whinging and bitching and moaning on Twitter, or, digitally lynch mobbing people, or cancel culture, or, walking down the street, lighting things on fire. These are all just tantrums akin to the social development of a 3-year-old, and they don't change anything or do anything. And so if anybody has a challenge with any part of the world, it is, how do I become the example of the world that I want to see and help create? And what am I going to do about it? Not who am I going to whinge to? Not who can I blame? Not how can I protest or how can I attack people on Twitter? That shit's not change. What changes is, who can you become? What can you do that's constructive? And then do that.
I love it, man. And I think a lot of people that are listening or curious about, you know, these things that are happening outside of them, they haven't taken the time to go inside and really learn about themselves, to know that they can do something about it.
Totally.
Utilizing this will.
Oh, dude, it's so much easier just to blame everybody else and attack people on Twitter and Facebook, because then I don't have to do any work. I don't have to turn the spotlight onto myself. I feel this immediate sense of moral superiority. It's unearned virtue. And all of a sudden I can espouse my views and be superior to everybody else because of how woke I am. And I get all of that without having to do any work. That's alluring to somebody with the emotional development of a 20-year-old. You know, and there's a lot of 40 and 50-year-olds with the emotional development of a 20-year-old. And that's alluring. And so, and that's the danger of a lot of the rise in some of this kind of woke, extreme left type culture is the product is good. You know, it's immediately gratifying. You can develop an immense amount of unearned virtue immediately just by telling other people how morally superior you are to everybody else, and immediately you will feel good. Problem is, you're not creating anything constructive. You're not doing any internal character development or work on yourself. And fundamentally, you're not making any positive change in the world whatsoever. And so that's the problem, is that it's immediately emotionally gratifying. It just isn't constructive for anybody.
Fascinating. And this emotional development, when you go in and you spend time with this, like, emotional, because I think emotional intelligence is such an important part of our cognitive abilities. And it's like, I call it like heart level intelligence. And so if we bring in that emotional connectivity, without using the mind, we don't really actually create that coherence, right? Where we're bridging our mind and our hearts together to really amplify the intelligence through our communication, through our being, through our response, through the ways that we're actually listening to each other. And so this type of communication that, you know, even when people are bitching or complaining, it's fascinating how much we can do as leaders to listen to them, try to understand their maps of the world, and recognize that they're maybe coming from their own pain or from their own uncertainty. And so for those of us that are in this place where we can learn to listen, how do you feel that it's imperative for us to, like, really be that change? Like you said, just go and do it. So my question is, what do you feel? And the reason I ask feel is because I'm very conscious that you're part of the, like, you can feel your body about, like, what's real and what's not. What do you feel when we're in the public, or we're speaking to individuals, we're being challenged, and I'm certain that you've been challenged and people are attacking you? What do you respond from an internal space where you're in this place of peace, where you're in this place of certainty, even though other individuals are challenging you with this kind of, like, negative response? Do you know what I'm saying? Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't get a lot of feedback like that. I mean, I think when I do, that my first thought is there any validity to this? Because again, you know, like, if we come back to that kind of woke extreme left crowd that I was speaking about a moment ago, a lot of people giving them feedback that it would probably benefit them and everybody else if they actually listened to. And I know that's certainly been true for me in my own experiences. Whenever I've had real fundamental growth, it's been because I had a blind spot. I had one view of reality and I had a blind spot over here. And either somebody or a bunch of experiences was highlighting this area over here that I didn't think was true. I didn't want to be true, but it was the expanding my perspective to understand something that I previously didn't understand. That's where growth comes from. And so not all feedback is bad, but one needs to be objective enough to determine is there validity to this feedback? Is there merit to this feedback? And if there is, how can I adapt in response to that? I mean, most of the feedback you get on the internet lacks merit and validity. And so in those instances, I mean, you just get to a point where you no longer hear it. Like, you know, when I started out in business, coming up to two decades ago, 20 years ago, if we did like an event or something and got like one person giving us bad feedback, like quietly in private on a feedback form, I'd be like, oh my God, the business is going to fail. What have we done? This person's got to speak to everyone. The show's over. Pack up my toys, go home. You know, like that would be my emotion, you know, at the age of 18, 19, 20, whatever, and not having any experience in the real, that would be my response. Now, someone can write a book about me, you know, some people can give feedback online. It's crazy how little attention you're able to pay to that sort of stuff. Mainly in my instance through exposure, you know, over the last 2 decades. Again, I don't get a lot of feedback on this, but just, you know, the feedback that everybody inevitably gets on their own journey. The more you realize it doesn't matter, and the more you're committed to focusing on the things that do matter, the less weight you give it. And so, I mean, I don't even, maybe I do get feedback. I don't know, but I don't see it.
But you're not paying attention to it, which is the focal point.
I couldn't care less.
That's really where I was trying. Yeah, like that's really because you're not listening. It's like you're listening to the things that matter, not to, you're seeing the solution. You're not thinking of the problem. And this is beautiful, bro. This is magic. This is like what drives absolute change.
100%. And I kind of think about it this way. There's so much that one can focus on that matters.
Yeah.
That I just don't understand why you would waste any bandwidth, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical bandwidth on focusing on the stuff that doesn't matter. And so I think over time, it's important that we each develop our understanding of what matters to us. And, you know, if I've got this vision, if I've got this dream, and this is where I want to go, and this is what matters most to me, then the things that matter and line up to the achievement and the attainment and the creation of all of that, the things that matter are the things that matter to me. And anything that falls outside of that doesn't influence it, you stop paying attention to. And so there is more than enough, you know, my days and weeks and months and years in life has been filled with more than I could ever do or understand or build knowledge around. You know, there's just so much that I want to master and become and change and influence. There's no way I could do it all in one lifetime. Yeah. And so there's just too much to do that's meaningful.
Which is why you're back, bro. It's why you're back. You know it.
Yes. Yeah. There's too much to focus on that's meaningful to focus on anything that isn't.
Yeah. Like this is exactly why you're back in this lifetime, is to continue all the lessons that you do from the one that you didn't finish in the last one. Right?
Correct. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point.
So and then, you know, we continue playing more and more and more and creating. And this is the exciting part of what's happening now. And bro, we're young. You're 36, I'm 35. Like we got our lives ahead of us, man.
Correct.
You know, like
exactly.
We got so much to do, so much to create, so much to have fun with. And this is the most exciting part is,
you know what, Eric?
Our play.
I've never thought about it like that, man, because, you know, I share your view in that I think we've been here thousands of times. I've done a lot of past life regressionist work. But I'd never joined those two dots. What you just said was actually really profound, because like I often think, you know, there's just so much to learn and to build a mental model around and to affect and to become in this life. And, you know, I just won't get it all done. And I never thought about that's probably what I thought in the last life, and that's probably why I came back. It's just this fucking life journey. That's a good point.
Yes,
that's a very good point. I like it.
Yeah, man, it's really a blessing, bro. And so like now with this next stage, you know, like what's happening, what's present for you right now, what's really exciting for Jack, What's the most thing that you're like super amped up about what you're creating right now?
Oh man. So, at the time of filming, I have a little girl, baby girl, that's due 1 week from today. So
Amazing.
yeah. So like literally this time in 7 days, God willing, I'll be a dad.
Congratulations, bro.
So
Wow.
yeah, I'm coming into a chapter where, my partner Amanda is my ultimate priority. Being an incredible father is my second priority, and I say that quite purposefully. Counterintuitive kind of view I have is that we, particularly as men, should prioritize our relationship and our spouse first. Because that's what provides the example to our children. And if I'm having a little girl, I want her to look at how I treat her mother, and hold that as the example as to how men should treat women, and how a developed man should be. And so, being a great partner and being an example to my kid, and ultimately my children, because we'll go again, is right at the forefront. And then in business, man, it's interesting. I'm going through a season now where I'm really coming back to fundamentals and foundations. And this is the thing, right? Is the greats are the greats because they do the basics well at scale. Scale in business is often not about doing more; it's about doing less better. And I'm in one of those seasons right now where I want to do less better. And I actually think that's the next kind of wave in my own evolution as an entrepreneur and an investor, is you go through seasons of expanding in terms of breadth and doing more. Last year I bought an island. I started an accounting company. We scaled our growth services company, which is a professional services company. I'm going down a property investment route. There was a lot of expansion by way of breadth. And then the next season for me is about coming back to the fundamentals within each venture and within everything I do, and making sure that I've got a team of 100 people around the earth. And so making sure me and everybody is in pursuit of excellence of the detail. And so whereas the last season was expanding in terms of breadth, and the next season commercially for me is going deeper in terms of depth. Mm-hmm. Which I think is such an interesting, which is an interesting lesson, and because some people might be surprised by what I just said, given the kind of breadth of activity that I'm involved in these days, and the lesson there is exactly what I just said. It's not, you don't kind of build a successful business, build another successful business, and then forever live your life in this, upper echelon where details don't matter.
Yeah.
The fundamentals will always be the fundamentals, regardless of how successful one might think that they are. And so, I kind of view life as a spiral, right? You often come back to the same lessons. And so, yeah, for me, I'm loving diving into the detail, diving into the fundamentals, diving into the foundational stuff, and fine-tuning what we're doing to reach a standard of very high excellence.
I love it. And this is where our principles and our values are so, like, they're these foundations, bro. This is where the pursuit of excellence comes from. It's like,
yes,
knowing that these values, these principles, these are the things that really drive change in front of all those 100 people that are around you worldwide, right? Like those are the things that when you pass that on, right, that like you don't have to do anything, you because you're just being the principles, that you're being the values, and as a result, that's just passed through. And so I think that this is very profound what you just shared, and it's so important, because at the end of the day, if most people think in that capacity, right, they can hold that capacity within themselves, and as a result, pass that through by just being in the presence of themselves and showing, like with your family, with your little girl, with your partner, like that is the essence of why we're here, and this Absolutely. Will continue to prove through, and it becomes like that whole breadth becomes the depth because of your presence, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. Well put. Yeah. Yeah. You want to build depth across the entire breadth. That's really well put.
Yeah. It's you, bro, you're beautiful, man. I really appreciate you. And the fact that you really nailed the part, like, it's so important, like family, you know, at the end of the day, really that expression of how you're looking at your partner and your newborn child, and then that will just start to multiply. And it already has, even though you don't have it, but that love will multiply throughout your whole, or all your organizations and all the people, because they will just watch the way that you are. And that, like, intention, bro, it will captivate so much attention by the people around you that you'll just, like, you'll I mean, you're already doing it, bro. You know what I'm talking about.
It's being the example. It's being the example. Yeah. 100. Yeah, man, we came full circle. That's what it is. I think the best way to affect change in the world is to affect change in oneself. Yeah. And the best way to do that is to be the example and the embodiment of the principles that you think matter the most.
Absolutely. Bro, you're a blessing, man. I just want to say thank you for your time.
You too, brother.
Your Thanks, kindness, man. All your story, and you know the resilience that you bring, right? Not just through your stories and all the things that you've pushed yourself through, the time, you know, I know that these things that it takes time and effort from an internal space. And so I just want to say thank you for being, bro. And last question before, you know, we iron it out. If you had 3 days left to live, what would you do?
I spend it with my partner and my daughter and my family. Super simple.
Big love to you, bro. I appreciate you.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate. No, just well done on the work that you're doing, man. You know, we watch what you do, and similarly, you're a bright light in a world that needs it. So keep doing what you're doing, and thank you very much for having me on.
Big love, brother. Take care of yourself, and we'll talk soon. I look forward to it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to The Resilient Minds. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please make sure to go comment and like and follow us on iTunes or Spotify, and please make sure that if you really love this, to share this episode, and make sure that you're inviting all your friends to like it as we continue to unfold what the beauty of our minds does. More importantly, how powerful our heart level of intelligence can be when we combine our heart and our brain together. And more importantly, check out the alignment course that I've created. It's seriously there for you to take advantage of at www.ericbalance.com/alignment. See you on the next show.